in Jerusalem when the revelation concerning the evil fire offering in the flying containers, the size of Scud missiles, being launched from the land of Shinar against the land of Israel. And what would be the beginning of it? The two man-made mountains of brass. Those two towers coming down. And that is when the war chariots were released. That began World War III. The rabbis, Sephardic and Ashkenazi rabbis, who can hardly agree on anything, make a unified proclamation to the entire world. The week of March 26th, leading up to that Shabbat, they made the proclamation, and they made it twice. They went down on two separate occasions to establish it. The time of Jacob's trouble has now begun. Jews now from all over the world return to the land of Israel. The next year, at the time that the barley was aviv and the new moon appeared, they said, last year we said that the time of Jacob's trouble has now begun. Jews surrounded or scattered over the face of the earth, now come home to Israel. We've been calling for this for a year. Come home to Israel now. The time of Jacob's trouble has now begun. But what happened 6 months after the time of Jacob's trouble had now begun? A Jewish prophet left the environs of Jerusalem with a message to the people of Iceland. He arrived, called a press conference, and he said to the entire nation, the Muslims are about to do something that will change the face of the earth. It will be so horrific, it will change the world. All week long, they kept replaying that press conference. And every night on the news, the newscasters would laugh at him. The crazy man from Israel. The crazy man from Israel, night after night after night. The end of the week, this berated prophet flew back to Israel. I arrived the next morning. I went to sleep. After 2 days of not sleeping, I woke up with Ingy at Ingy's bed and breakfast, slamming his fist on the door. Something terrible has happened in America. The trade centers were on their way down at that moment. I picked up where the prophet left off. I was sent from Costa Rica to deliver a message. And that message, I went for hours on television. And as I mentioned last week, at the end, I did a seminar, and a woman stood up and said, I thought you were going to tell us the relationship with Solomon's pillars and the trade centers. And a bolt of lightning went through me. I mean, it was electric. It almost floored me. And I said, I didn't know that I was going to tell you about it, but there's something there. I don't know what it is. Then at the last great day, what I shared with you, in Jerusalem, when the revelation concerning the evil fire offering in the flying containers, the size of Scud missiles, being launched from the land of Shinar against the land of Israel. And what would be the beginning of it? The two man-made mountains of brass. Those two towers coming down. And that is when the war chariots were released. That began World War III. The Muslims had declared war upon all the Jews who happened to own the trade centers and the Christians. That was the beginning of the war. And I wrote at that time that the Almighty is going to use the worshipers of a fictitious moon god to judge those who have turned their back on the creator of the heavens and the earth. And the nation that declared We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, in that they are endowed by their Creator with absolute inalienable rights, rights that no king, no religious or civil tyrant has the right or authority to strip from the people. And as Samuel Adams said, that all rights are antecedent to the Constitution. They come from the great legislator of the universe. This God that we swore to honor and love and respect and trust, this God has now been nullified by the atheist, socialist, and the Muslims that we have elected and put in government. They will be used, the Muslims, to judge America, just as they are being used to judge Europe now. Ladies and gentlemen, they're going to be used to judge Israel as well. It's going to set in place that which I am going to be able to share with you when we come to our culminating moment in this series. March 26, 2001, the time of Jacob's trouble has now begun. Every year since that day, that is when the rabbis again assemble to declare that in 2001, on that date, the day of trouble, Jacob's trouble began. Just began. It is not a 7 years of Jacob's trouble, ladies and gentlemen. Time of Jacob's trouble begins at the beginning of the 7th millennium. Now, I know I would love that for it to have been the beginning of Yeshua's, that he would return then and reign forever, for 1,000 years upon the earth. That would have been great. In 2000, when the violence erupted, I expected that it would erupt into full-blown warfare. I really expected that that's where it was going to go. But I had no revelation to declare, thus saith the Lord. I simply had the clarity from the scriptures to say that violence will erupt in Jerusalem before sundown, September 28th. That's all that I could say, because that's all that the scriptures say. Because the prophecy concerning the scriptures, or prophecy about the scriptures, or a prophetic word doesn't come by the will of man. The confirmation doesn't come by the will of man. In 2006, when I put out the Jonah Code, I would love to have been able to give you the confirmation back then, but I didn't have it. All the pieces were not in place. I said I have more, but I knew then that there are more pieces that have to fall in place that were not there. Just 6 months later, it was the week leading up to January 27th, which started the new week. But we had been filming in Israel over on the side of the Mount of Olives. Actually, the moment in time was captured on the bloopers reel. I was saying that there was a particular time in Israel when the people were, and then a siren went off, and I said, arrested. That was not in the script. That was not what I was supposed to deliver at that time, but right then, something hit me. I was due, in just 6 months' time, I was due to do a first archaeological tour extravaganza in Israel. Everything was being set up at that time. I heard the siren go off, but see, we have been hearing sirens go off and explosions happening and buses being blown up on a regular basis. And there were bombs that were being blown up in Jerusalem just about every week. We were told before going over there, we were actually at Enlace in Costa Rica, where we had the contract with Enlace to produce the Feast of the Lord. And they said, do it here, film it here. We got a brand new studio, it's yours. Says it's dangerous, it's too dangerous to be doing this in Israel. And I said to Jonas Gonzalez, I said, the safest place for me to be is in God's will. And Roberto Emanuel was there and heard that statement. And now Roberto actually arrives in Jerusalem that week and is there for that filming. But I heard that siren go off, and just the gut-wrenching feeling when a bomb goes off and people are dead and another bus has been blown up, 2 blocks from the house, and one was blown up just on the other side of the building where my daughter, who came to visit, steps out of the shuk at Mahani Yehuda, and the bomb goes off and people are screaming and on fire, rushing out of that. There's no way to describe the horror, the terror that happens. And right then, something hit me, and I heard a voice that said, "What if you bring a tour over here and they blow up the bus?" Now, that is what I heard in my head, and it haunted me. It haunted me for days. I couldn't get that out of my brain. What if? That is something that sets in motion some fear that goes through the mind. And I am just praying about it because it was a question and I don't have the answer. It rains all week. We're unable to film. And then finally on Sunday morning, January 27th, it's a beautiful sunshiny morning in Jerusalem. We're living on Eli Cohen Street. And so Chaim decides he's going to take off and go downtown. And I decide a little while later, I'm going to go down and get a cup of coffee. It's about 3 miles downtown Jerusalem. So we don't take a bus, we walk, because a bus is $1.25. And 3-mile walk, it's good for you. And we only rent a vehicle at the very days that we're filming. And that's what kind of tight budget we're on to produce a chronological from the Rood Awakening from Israel series. And so I go downtown and I'm walking. It's a beautiful day. The streets are absolutely full. First day of the week, everyone's working. The kids are at school. And but yet the streets are filled with people. So much so I'm walking down Jaffa Street and I have to get around this one area. I had to step out on the street and walk around the bus stop. And then I step back up on the street. And then my eyes catch a shoe store, Jaffa 50. It says Now Sandals. It hit my mind. Chaim said that he needed to have his Now Sandals resold. So as I'm walking up toward the building, out from the building, a woman walks with a suitcase in her hand. We walk past each other, and I keep walking, and 4 more steps, the entire front of the building dissolves. A blast goes past me in smoke, and I smell the fumes of burning flesh and burning hair, and then a woman's head rolls to my feet. I look to my left, and there are arms and there are legs. There are people that are on fire. I look out in the street, and there's a man with both of his legs blown off. His right arm is gone, and the stub of his right arm is on fire. He flails for a couple seconds, and he's done. He's gone. He's dead. I look back at myself to see if I'm all there. And I hear a voice that says very calmly, very loudly, because I'm literally deafened from the concussion, and that's why I wear hearing aids today. You are here to help. That's what I hear. I turn to my left, and I see an Israeli soldier who has blown his back. His shirt is gone. The stubble of his hair and beard are just smoking. It was just flash fire. It's gone. He's blown his back. He struggles to get up. I step over this woman's head, leap over a few arms and legs, and there I get to him as he starts to struggle to get up, and I see he's covered with blood, and he looks at me and says in English, which surprises me, am I hurt? And I run my hands over the front and the back of him, and I take his right hand and put it above a gash above his right eye, and I said, keep pressure on this. You've got a cut above your right eye, but you are going to be okay. This is not your blood. And then I turn to my left, and there's an M16 just a few feet away. And I said to him, is that your weapon? And he said, yes. I said, I'm going to get it for you, okay? Because now I'm going to arm myself. The shoulder strap, a nylon shoulder strap, has been shredded from it. The force that it would take to do that, I can only imagine, having carried an M14 with a shoulder strap like that. He's got an M16. The shoulder strap is shredded from it. I go over, I crawl on my hands and knees. I get a hold of it with my thumb and forefinger and drag it over to the soldier and put it right in front of him. I flip it over. I check the magazine in safety. I look at him and I say, I am a U.S. Marine. If anything happens, I will handle your weapon for you, okay? Now, fortunately, I didn't have to go on and explain how I'm a fat, old U.S. Marine. At the moment, U.S. Marines seem to just work for them. And I know from experience and from what I've heard in the past that many times the terrorists, the Muslims, will set off a bomb. As the rescue workers come in, then they will still open up fire or set off another bomb. I want to have a weapon there so that I can put a bullet in the head of the first person that starts to shout out, Allahu, bam, dead. That is what I'm watching for. That's why I need the weapon there. Seconds pass. I look around. There's another Israeli soldier blown back. Other people are getting to him. Then there's a woman who is caught up in these wires that are in front of this pillar that are blown down from the building. And she's tangled up in them. Now, that just happens to be that 16-inch wide concrete pillar that I was on the other side of. That as the woman walked out of the shoe store with this suitcase and stepped past me, she took 4 more steps and that suitcase detonated. I took 4 steps and I was squarely on the opposite side of the concrete pillar that blew the entire front of the store away. For 150 feet in each direction, all the front storefronts were gone. Across the street, for 100 feet, the storefronts were gone. The front windshield of a bus was blown out. 150 plus people are going to go to the hospital. It is the largest bomb that's ever been blown up in downtown Jerusalem. And this woman is tangled up in these wires trying to get through them. And I could see that blood was soaking her sweater. It's just a few feet away. The rifle is in front of that Israeli soldier. I know all I have to do is turn around, drop down, and I can grab it. And so I will go over to her, and I see that the blood is coming out from her sweater. And I look down, and she has a piece of plate glass sticking out of her thigh, tangled up in this. I look in her eyes, and they are completely dilated. There is no color at all. I thought that she may have been blinded by the concussion. And I said, can you see me? Can you see me? And she said, I have to find my husband. I have to find my husband. I said, no, your husband will come to you. I took her by the shoulder and I held her firmly because I know she can't move right now. We got to wait for the medics. If she moves, she could cut an artery, and so I've just got to hold her. And she said, I have to find my husband. And then she looked over my shoulder and saw the man in the street with both of his legs blown off. And she screamed, my husband, that's my husband. And I just prayed. I said, Lord, what do I do? How do I comfort her? And right then, a young Jewish girl came up. And I said, she can't move. You got to hold her right here. She can't move. But that's her husband. She wrapped her arms around her sister, avoiding the glass in her leg, and just held her right there. I looked around. Other people were being taken care of. Emergency workers were coming in. Looks like everything was going as planned, no other attacks. So I picked up this woman's head. I held it in my arms thinking, here's a young Jewish mother, her children at school, her wife, husband's at work. No one's even going to know she's dead for hours. What am I going to do with this woman's head? And so I took a piece of the blue banner that blew down from the building. They covered the man up in the street with part of it. I took this woman's head, I wrapped it up, and I was standing there and thinking, what am I going to do? I can't just lay it down. So I put it over by a pillar. I stepped back and I said, I'm going to have to wait until I can tell somebody what I did. And so an officer, IDF, came up and I said, I wrapped a woman's head and I put it over by that column. And I couldn't think of Rosh Isha to save my life. I could, Hebrew. And he finally, and he said, woman's head? I could tell by his expression he knew. It's time for me to get out of there. I walked a half a block away and I stopped. I thought, I better take a better look, make sure I'm all there. And I had blood, I had flesh, I was just covered with just all sorts of human debris at this point. And I held up my hands to look to see if everything's all right, no cuts. And I was rock solid. It surprised me. I thought I would be, just shaking with adrenaline rush. That's what you would expect from that. But I'm rock solid. You're here to help. You're here to help. I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if I had heard from the Lord that morning, I'm going to send you downtown Jerusalem and blow up a bomb just 8 paces away from you. People's arms and legs you're going to have to step over. You're going to hold a woman's head in your hands, but not one hair of your head is going to be singed. If I was given that revelation, I think I'd probably still be under my bed today. I'd never walk into that situation. But ladies and gentlemen, that happened to me because it is a prophetic testimony. We are here to help. We are not here to get blown up. We are here to help. And if we will do our job right now and continue doing that, when the brimstone hits the fan, when the earth shakes, you are going to know what to do. You will be rock solid because you are on a rock. That is why that happened. Because the time of Jacob's trouble has begun. There will be 1,000 on one side and 10,000 laying dead on the other side. It won't come nigh to you. This is the promise. We're all going to go sometime, but we're going to live as if we are immortal because we are. If we are dead and in the grave, blown to pieces, we will be raised with an incorruptible body. If we are still alive, radiation burns, whatever, we will be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. But until that day, you are here to help.
Shalom, Torah fans. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Tap the subscription button and the bell icon. And I promise to update weekly with in-depth biblical research. Be sure to download the new michaelrood.tv app for both mobile and home devices for even more commercial-free content.